Okay, so thought I'd get a bit of a workflow going and just kind of show you my process for creating things like houses. So I'm probably not going to go into insane amounts of detail about all the UV modeling and texturing on this one. I just want to show you how I kind of plan the groundwork, build up the walls, so that you can see how I run that process. So first things first, let's get myself a plane. So these are basically going to represent the little floor plans. So obviously I want this to hit nice and zero. And then from there, I'm going to obviously decide what part of the house this is. Now, ideally, I like to go off building plans, but in this case, I'm just going to kind of effectively pull some figures out of my head. You see that I'm working in meters, which is great. You really want to be working in proper measurements meters when doing buildings. Let's go for something like a good sized living dining area for this first floor. So I'm going to go for like 3.5 meter by 4 meter, and there we go. I've got like a basic layout of a dining room. Okay, I'm going to copy that and then I'm going to move it across GY so I can slide it up and down. So if I head backwards here, and then I'm going to GX to move it across. You'll notice that I'm not trying to get them too close together at this stage, and that's because later on I'll have a think about wall thickness. So for now, I'm not trying to kind of squeeze these too far together. And I think I'll go for a 2.5 by 2 meter bathroom. I'm just going to have to actually kind of remember what all of these things are for in the end, because I haven't exactly planned it out sensibly here. But there we go. So there might be my bathroom. Obviously, I've got a bit of slotting together here, but I'll widen those out as walls go in. Right, next I will do myself maybe a kitchen. So if I were to do that again, GX, GY, sorry, to move it along this axis. Well, yeah, I'll kind of put my kitchen about here. It'll do nicely. And I'll extend it a little bit on the Y, quite a bit along the X, and then G, Y, got to move this up a bit, then move it across a bit. Okay, now what I could start to do here is start thinking about where things like hallways might go. So this is actually quite a large kitchen at the moment, so it might even be a good idea to kind of shrink it down a tiny bit. Say 2.6. In fact, I'll leave it at that, but that is still quite a large kitchen. Pull it across to here and then pull it around about to here, and now I've got a kind of corridor area as well for later on. I'll put that in now, the corridor, again GY, move it along. Corridors, I mean, let's be fair about this, they're probably good meter and a half at most, really, when you think about it. Corridors don't tend to be very wide. I am putting things in place, but I'm not trying to overdo it, to be quite honest. Otherwise, it's just going to end up with too much going on. Okay. Okay, so now I've got a couple of good things going on. I've got living room, diner, kitchen, corridor, and then a bathroom, which basically then allows me over this side to start putting in the bedrooms. So I'm going to copy this one because it's a nice big size. I'm going to GX it along. Okay, I'm going to pull that back down to 1.5 because that's the size of my corridors, and I'm just going to run this a little bit longer. Okay, and I think if I slide it to, yeah, I think I'll slide it to about here. So obviously now this is a T-shaped corridor, basically. I'm going to grab another one of these. pop it across here. That's a good size for a master bedroom. In fact, it's a little bigger than your average master bedroom might be. Pull this one along here, and this would be the secondary bedroom, which is looking okay so far. Now the question is, obviously this would look a very strange house, but I'm not going to pull this corridor up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull this along here, shorten it down a bit. Yeah, I think a little bit more I can get that. And obviously this can be this can work as a small private bathroom for the master bedroom. So now you can see I've got a kind of nice layout of the house with just the nice layout at the moment. Obviously I can refine it later on and decide if I really want these things to be kitchens and whatever else. So that's our good little start so far. The next stage is to start putting the walls up. So the next part of this process is to start building the walls now. What you have to do is think about the material basically that you're making the walls out of. But if it's just for kind of show and it's not really being used for anything technical, say you just want a building that people can look at or even walk into, then you don't need to overthink this part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a cube. And suppose a good thickness for a basic, say, inner wall or even a really simple outer wall is probably about 20 centimeters. So that'll give you something that'll look like a proper partition, and then you can add it to your design. So again, I'm trying to not overthink this too much at this stage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, I think it's Shift Z. Yeah, Shift Z to exclude the Z axis so it doesn't keep floating upwards. You can see now that I've Shift Z, it won't go up and down the Z axis. And I can start putting my wall over here. I want it to obviously be as long as this, so that would be 3.5. Oh, no, sorry, 4 meters on the X. There we go. Now, what you got to remember then is, because this is an inner wall, I want it to kind of come out a bit further. So if each of these walls here is going to be 20 centimeters thickness, I'll have to add 40 centimeters to the length of the wall. It's really that simple. And that way, when we line them up, it should be fine. Say should be fine. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Obviously, I can now copy this wall to start doing other parts. So pop one over here. I need to obviously shrink this down quite a lot to fit over here. Oh, wrong one. G, Y, pop it over here. I'm going to try and get this somewhere close to the middle of this. Again, I'm going to obviously pull it outwards, so it's currently it needs to be, where are we now? 2 meters to match that. But of course, I'm going to add the extra length so that when it joins up over here, it should be fine. Just move this slightly across the Y, so it's more there. Okay. Yeah, as I said, I'll really start getting into the details of this quite soon, but I can obviously say that I need to move that across as well. You can see all I'm doing is just basically getting everything where I think it should be, and there's no other way to explain it really. I am just shrinking all these walls down, making sure they fit, making sure that they sort of overlap correctly, and just really creating all the framework. Now, I don't want to bore you completely by showing you every single wall that I'm going to put in, because these are all the external walls. So I'm just going to stop the recording, finish the external walls, and then restart when I'm doing the internals. Moving on, what going to do next is I'm going to try and get these walls kind of correctly laid out and on line with each other. So, you know, I've done some pretty precise jobs over this side, but they're always going to be slightly out unless you start really getting some, you know, very precise points. So in order to do that, I'm going to actually start by just grabbing all of this, and I'm just going to move it along the X, and it should now, fingers crossed, yeah, so it's in positive X, and then I'm going to GY, and that now should all be in, let's have a look at it. Oh, I'm not in positive X, I'm on the wrong side there. There we go. Right, now I'm dealing with positive numbers only, which is going to make things a lot easier now. Okay, so what I want to happen is I want this corner right here to be slap bang on 0. So I want this specific corner all the way across on 0, because at the moment what we've got is we've got everything kind of on a plane with positive going upwards and negative coming downwards, and that's going to make it a lot harder to line everything up later on, because I've got to kind of mess around dealing with my head. Okay, if it's minus this and I want it 3 meters from there, what positive is it going to end up with? So I just find it a lot easier if I start going from this corner, which, you know, isn't that hard to do actually when I start working on it. So I'm going to pick this particular wall as my focal wall. I'm going to press into tab, and that's to get into editor mode, and I'm going to go using vertex to begin with, and I'm going to go up to mesh. I'm going to snap, and then I'm going to snap the cursor to the vertex I've selected. I'm going to go back out again, and then I go into object, and then I'm going to set origin to the 3D cursor. Now what happens is when I put this at 0, 0, 0, there we go, we can see I'm perfectly on the 0, 0, 0, and that's going to make it a lot easier to work out where to put everything. So I don't have to go into that much insane detail with the rest of them, I really don't, because obviously a lot of this is just going to be about pulling things to 0 in some cases. Again, though, you can see a slight problem here when dealing with this, because now I've got this wall, I tell it to go to 0Z and it's still halfway along. I can tab back in and basically do the same thing with that one right there. So I'm going to go mesh, snap, cursor to selected, back out again, set origin to 3D cursor. Obviously, if you've got like a really good maths brain on you, you don't really need to go through this whole one. I'm sure you should just be able to kind of work out where to put everything perfectly. But for some of us who really struggle with working out our maths, particularly going negative to positive, positive to negative, and dealing in decimal places, it's just not something we're really capable of doing. Now, what you will see though is I will be able to start getting all of this pretty much where I want it to be. Again, you can see here with this plane, if I set it to 0, 0, 0, 0, it's kind of jutting over. In order to get it exactly where I need to do, I'd have to go through all of these, I think 1.3, and then that would be, no, not that one. I would have to work out its positions by kind of working out how much of a difference between this one and this one is. So if I did 1.3 there, I've got it moving in the right direction, and then that's half of 3.6, that's 1.8, yeah, 1.8, but that's really an absolute pain to do all the maths on. So the good thing is about going in and changing the starting position, you can always make sure that you're picking one particular thing for every single one of these and telling it where to start. Now what happens then is you're just dealing with the lengths of the different walls. So if I know for a fact that this is 7.8 long, that means it's 7.8 from this vertex to this vertex here, and it means that if I set my origin on this vertex to this corner here, I can actually just then tell it to move to things, I can basically just tell it to move to 7.4 on the X, which I'll just quickly show you now. Obviously, I don't like boring everyone by showing the whole process because, you know, I've got a lot of vertexes to do here, but you can see how I'm doing it, and that's the main thing, and how I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting everything exactly where I want it to be. So again, I'm going to move this up to 0. This one can be at 7.8. Oh no, it's not at the wrong one. It would be, is it that one? Yeah, there we go. That one at 7.8 there. I should have probably made it the outer vertex, but that's fine. I can just 7.6. Yeah, there we go. It's a lot easier to do on the maths if you just pick the right vertex to begin with. And set that to 0, and there we go. I'm building up this walls now, and I'm going to get them all nicely aligned. I'm going to get all the floors, the room shapes nicely aligned to it, and then I'm going to come back and show you the internal walls. Now that I've got all of my kind of floor plans in place, you can see that I've got these laid out, and then I've kind of changed some of the sizes up. And this is just to try and make sure that when I start putting the walls in, they're roughly the right shape, size, position. But overall, I've moved all the walls into the correct positioning and then put the floor plans in. And now it's time for the internal walls. So the good thing is, I'm not going to overthink this really. I'm just going to use the same width as I've done for the external walls. So let's just again press J. I'm going to obviously start moving some of these into the right position. So I can see straight away that I've actually got a tiny bit more space that I could use here. I could actually increase the size of this room by a tiny bit. I'll do that later. I'm not going to do that now. But making sure that this is roughly in the right place straight away. So I would probably go up to, yeah, there we go, 3.9. Yeah, there we go. So that's in the right place. My next decision that I need to make is I might decide to keep this here, even though it's currently intersecting this corridor. What I could do is later on I'll actually just cut into this and kind of make a frame, so it's kind of like not a door frame but a like decorative walk through the hallway. So I don't really need to remove that. I can keep it solid because it makes a useful wall for this one here. Again, slightly out, but I'll fix that later on. Again, I'll create another one of these, pull it along 5.8 by the look of it, and then I really do need to shorten this one down because it only needs to go between these two here. So I don't think that's much more than 2, that one. To move that along the X, okay, to roughly there. Let's spin this around. It's a bit shorter than that, isn't it? 1 point. There we go. That might be more precise there. Move that to 2.8. There we go. Okay, so again, getting my little walls in as I go along, and just basically getting them nice and balanced. GY, move this along, get it roughly where I need it to be. GX, move it along, get it roughly where I need it to be. Okay, so how wide do I need to make this one roughly? So about 2.6. Let's move that along again. You can see this time I'm not that worried about getting an overlap like I was before. So whereas when I was doing these walls and I wanted the corners to join together nicely and give an overlap, with these that's not quite what I want. I actually don't need the overlap anyway, because you've got to imagine these are becoming the internal walls. Right, I think then I've got those walls all in. I can actually decide if I'm going to increase that later, make these join up, but I'll leave them. Now I've got to do the other walls. again, that same basic logic. Now, this is where you've got to start asking yourself the question, am I going to have like unique decoration on each wall? So if you're not really going to show much of the internal and it's just for getting general structure, you don't need to really start thinking about textures and wrapping. I actually think I might want in the future to actually see the inside of this, because I don't really know what I'm going to use this for in the future. I just know that, you know, I do want to have it all nicely set up with all the walls. So because this is a separate a wall for this inner one, I think the right thing to do is keep them separate. So that would mean that I go along with this one, and I'm going to push this over to here. Good thing is it's sort of kind of nicely slotting together. You can see where the room sizes are will get slightly increased, but we're talking about a couple of centimeters here in real life. Right, let's have a look how long do I need that. I need that 3.6 that room is, so yeah, there we go. Again, it's all starting to slot together now. I start to get the precise points. Yeah, that's. Ooh, it's not quite right, that is it. Oh, this is just the point now where I have to start really playing around with tiny little dimensions. It's obvious that that wall is not long enough. I'm going to have to just increase it a tiny bit. Okay, there we go. So we're getting there. We're actually getting all these walls into position as I would want them now. And obviously then run this along here. Now, because this is probably going to be potentially a little shower for the master bedroom, and based upon its size, it's very small size, or even a walk-in wardrobe, I think I'll pull this wall back a little bit in size. So if I pull it down to 2, yeah, I can keep going smaller than that now. So let me have a look. And then this one here, I suppose I'm going to move it around. Oh, I didn't take a copy of that one, did I? Again, pop it around here. How long does this need to be? I'll go up to 2.8 on this one. Yeah, there we go. Normally I wouldn't show you doing every single wall, but what you're seeing here is my kind of process of making sure that everything is in the right place, and that I'm thinking about how the corridor is going to be used. Obviously, now that I've thought about it in more detail, I'm starting to realise that I probably shouldn't let this wall span the whole thing, because it's going to cause problems later on if I want to do any UV mapping. So I think if I pull that down to 2.6, again, this is why using precise measurements is very useful. Even if you don't think it's going to be needed for kind of blueprint purposes, it's still a very good idea. There we go. I think that's nicely in place. You can see I'm being very precise here. I don't even want a millimetre off. I literally force the whole thing to be perfect. Okay. Again, it's very slowly building up now. It's getting there. That's 3.2, 2.6, 2.8. Yeah, I need to move this back a tiny bit, don't I? Right, 4.4, 4.4, there we go. Right, it's starting to all come together now. I'm really happy with how it's looking. Heading towards this last one. You'll notice that I'm not putting door frames in at the moment, but I'm going to do that using using some booleans later on if I choose to go that far. Probably won't do it in this video because this one's really more about creating the structure of it. Okay, I think we're looking good there. Yeah, 7.4 looks pretty precise. Yeah, they're in line with each other now, and then 2.4. Yep, we got that. Okay, so there we go. I've now pretty much created this entire house structure really well. I've got all the outside, and then I've got the internal walls all laid out now. And if I'm not going to waste time fixing these floors because although they might be useful, I'd have to spend a while thinking about how I need them. But I think this is a fair way of kind of showing you how to get this right. Because what we now have is we have a nice layout for a house. So let's see if I can remember what all these rooms were actually when I think about it. So we've got our corridor and we come in. Obviously the door will go here. We'll go up and then we'll turn into the master bedroom. Then we have the secondary bedroom. We've got the bathroom. Then we've got the kitchen and then we've got the living room. So we've got a nice little house here. Maybe design concepts, I might even want to move this back. And then we've got another room, or we've got kind of like a carport that could also be added to this. But it gives you a really good structure to start with, and it just makes you kind of understand how the building of a house starts and how we actually start piecing it all together. I mean, really, all this needs now is a roof, and then I could UV map it, texture it, and I could just import that as an asset into a computer game and it would just be there perfectly. So this is basically it now. This is the basic structure of a house. Hopefully when I go on to the next video, because this is running a bit long now and I'm waffling, I'll start doing the UV mapping. I'll start putting doors in so you can physically look like you would walk in the house.